What's happening, everyone? It's your boy Nunzi here. And a question that I have gotten so much over my career in coaching and training is, hey, Nunzi, how do you deal with sugar cravings? Ah, it's a good one, man, because I still deal with them. And there's a lot that you can do to help with this, right? So I'm going to give you guys a few different suggestions on how to deal with sugar cravings. And I think really the first most important thing is, and this is just a general rule in nutrition, is you have to really start to evaluate your relationship with food. And you need to start to look at food differently. Most people, I'd say, look at food as a form of pleasure. It's very feels really good to eat, right? It feels awesome to eat yummy food, the way we feel when we feel full, right? But in essence, food is actually designed to help us perform. So when you have this understanding that you're eating for fuel rather than eating for, pleasure, you're going to start to naturally build a healthier relationship with your food. So why is that important? Well, sugar cravings usually tend to happen when there is no rhythm and there's an inconsistency to the way you eat. So this is a very common circumstance that I've seen a lot from different people is where they will wake up late, running whatever, trying to get out the door. Most people don't eat breakfast. So breakfast is primarily skipped, or it might be a coffee. Most people have a coffee, latte, sugar, whatever, cappuccino. So we miss a meal. And then essentially we go into having like maybe a small lunch. Maybe, but it was something like around the area, a wrap, a sandwich. It's kind of like most of whatever, like something, fast food, so eating out, quick lunch. Okay, and then you would go, and then they would go, and this sounds, if this sounds like you, then you would go about 7 hours, maybe 6 hours without eating, right? Because you work the whole day, you get home around 5 or 6, and then essentially you're coming to the evening time here, and you've had maybe not a lot of calories, especially not a lot of good calories, and what happens is there's a hormone called cortisol, it's a stress hormone, that will naturally rise over the day. I bet you your sugar cravings are not actually really, really bad in the morning. They're probably much, much worse, in the nighttime PM hours, which makes sense. And that's when people's sugar cravings usually happen. So the reason why we get to this point is that your cortisol is naturally rising and you're not properly fed. So you're naturally going to want to consume food that is going to, that's why, it tastes really good, to satisfy that dopamine, to lessen the cortisol, the stress hormone. So most people have cravings due to irregular meal eating and they're not just properly fueling up. And I first hand saw this. So I'll live off a personal experience. I was for years I did intermediate fasting. Intermittent fasting. I still say intermediate, no joke. And I did intermittent fasting. And one of the things I noticed right away, and I noticed a lot of benefits from it. And fasting isn't for another video, but there actually already, there is a video actually made. But one of the things I was going to say is that when you fast, I found that my cravings were really bad. And the one time I've actually had a pretty good handle on my sugar cravings is when I've had a really dialed in meal cadence, usually from a bodybuilding show where I'm making a lot of effort to eating like 6 meals a day. I'm constantly eating, so I'm constantly fed. I'm sort of in a, I always call it like that gray zone. It's really good to stay in a gray zone. And what I mean by gray zone is that you never get super full where you're like, oh my God, I can't move. And then you never let yourself get super hungry, where you're just like ravenous and you want to have that sugar to crave you or satisfy you. So stay in a gray zone. And if you do fast, that's great because you're in a different mindset with the fasting. But still, when you do, start your feeding window, you're going to want to be really filling up on unhealthy stuff and nutrients. And that's the other thing too, is when you start to actually eat nutrient dense food, you're going to start to feel really good. People usually tend to have a lot more cravings when there's a lot more dysfunctionality in their life, where things, there's a lot of chaos, Like if you look at someone who's really grounded, who has their ducks in a row, who are taking care of themselves, my guess is they would have control over their cravings, right? So, I think that if your sugar cravings are really intense, I think it's also merit to look at your current situation in your environment, because that's playing a role on causing you to. That's why people drink and do drugs and do all these things, right? So that's one way of really helping with your cravings, is starting to develop a better meal timing. Eating every 2 to 3 hours, staying in a gray zone, never letting yourself get super hungry, never letting yourself get super full, and trying to promote an environment that's going to promote the least amount of stress. Another way that has worked wonders for me is, essentially what you must do is, I call it the kitchen clean out, or the art of the substitution. So, for example, like let's say you are a cookie person, right here, Cookie Monster. I love cookies, and let's say I wanted, so I have knowledge and understanding that if I go to like Subway or a bakery and eat one of their cookies, delicious, but very low quality nutrition, butter, sugar, just the stuff that we don't want, right? So you can substitute it. What's a cookie that I can make that would satisfy the cookie concept in my brain, right? But help me with my gains. So maybe I make a cookie that's full of oats, semi unsweetened dark chocolate chips, and almond flour, and some eggs. I don't know. I make myself a 5 ingredient cookie, and it's incredible. It's high in nutrients. It's getting the craving done, and I'm staying on track, right? So I've always said to clients, like, look at what you really crave and ask yourself, okay, well, what's the healthy alternative to that? Because there's a healthy alternative to everything, like literally everything. Like that's the cool thing about living in this era, is that like what you like, mac and cheese, okay, there's a healthy mac and cheese. You like burgers, there's a healthy burger. Like literally pretty much anything you can find more nutrient based. So the art of the substitution is another good technique that you can use to, because sometimes people struggle with another way of dealing with sugar cravings is to stop eating sugar. Like sugar is a drug. Like if you don't know by now, it is 100% a drug, and you become addicted to it and you go through withdrawal. Like if I was to, let's say, like the easiest way, a very fast, easy way to cut out sugar is to cold turkey it. A lot of people can't do that. It's really hard to do that. When you cold turkey anything, you're really pulling the pendulum the other way. So unfortunately, if you can't go through that process and that suffering, you're going to swing really hard the other way. That's why I kind of always taken a more moderate approach to the way I coach clients and myself. But you know, when you go cold turkey, like, and a way that you can help yourself go cold turkey is don't have anything in the house. A kitchen clean out will just pave the way, in so many different ways, to to help you overcome your sugar addiction. Like if I have cookies in the house, I'm gonna eat the cookies. Like I'm not like, my mother, bless her soul, amazing woman. She has the ability, like she could get a Kit Kat bar and she breaks like quarter of the Kit Kat. That whole bar lasts like one strand lasts for 3 days. Like, you know what I mean? Like one piece. So it's like if you have that kind of ability where you can have ice cream in the freezer and you can like not be tempted by it, that's great. I find most people don't. So the easier way of doing it is to just do a kitchen clean out. So yeah, that's another really awesome way, and that's just a good rule of thumb in general. Regardless if you are have sugar cravings, if you are trying to lose weight or build muscle, keep your kitchen full of good stuff. Like don't have crap in the house. If you're gonna buy crap, buy it as like a single use thing, and enjoy it in that moment. But don't have it like never buy things in huge boxes and stuff like that. Like you don't want temptation around all the time. So that's gonna help you. So those are some really good ways to start to deal with sugar cravings. And I think ultimately where you're going to really start to see immediate result with this is by getting in a good fitness mindset, right? So, working out regularly, getting outside, you want to promote a life that's not full of stress, because the more stress you have, if you're in stressful environments, the cravings are going to be a lot worse, compared to when you're more grounded, more mindful, more present. So that's going to really help you, making sure you're looking at food as fuel and not necessarily just pleasure. They can be both. Of course, like we talked about, the art of the substitution. So look, what do you really crave, and substituting that with a healthier alternative. Kitchen clean out by going cold turkey and just like stopping altogether. And that does some work. That does work for some. Sometimes you just kind of like, if you had enough of your shit and you're at the point where like, hey, I'm obviously not finding this moderation thing working, then just roll up your sleeves and suffer a bit and go through the pain. Because the cool thing about it is like there will come a point where you actually don't crave sugar anymore. Like when you don't eat sugar, you don't crave sugar. If you eat a lot of sugar, you crave a lot of sugar. So the easiest answer to say to deal with your sugar cravings is just stop eating so much sugar because you'll naturally not crave it anymore. So anyway, I love you guys. We're gonna be pumping out all these videos, so make sure you guys are learning lots and keep up the good work, everyone. Much love.